Emma Thompson stood barely 5 feet 2 inches in her steel-toed boots, her slight frame dwarfed by the towering fire trucks in the station bay. At 26, she had dreamed of becoming a firefighter since she was 7 years old, watching her father volunteer at the same small-town fire department. But as she faced the panel of 3 veteran firefighters, their skeptical expressions told her everything she needed to know before they even spoke. "Miss Thompson?" Chief Bradley Martinez cleared his throat, shuffling through her application papers. "Your academic scores are impressive. Top marks in fire science, emergency medical training, hazardous materials certification." He paused, looking up at her with the expression of a man about to deliver disappointing news. "But firefighting isn't about what you know on paper." Captain Joe Hendricks, a barrel-chested man with 20 years of service, leaned forward in his chair. "No offence, Emma, but you're what, 110 pounds soaking wet? Our equipment alone weighs more than you do. A standard oxygen tank is 30 pounds. The hose is 50 pounds when charged. And that's before we talk about carrying an unconscious adult down a ladder." Emma's jaw tightened. She had anticipated this conversation, had prepared for it, but hearing it still stung. "Sir, I've completed all the physical requirements. I can—" "The minimums, sure," interrupted Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the only woman on the panel, which somehow made her words cut deeper. "But, Emma, this job requires you to be able to carry a 200-pound man on your back while wearing 60 pounds of gear, in zero visibility, with flames around you and smoke in your lungs." Chief Martinez nodded solemnly. "We've seen people get hurt trying to be heroes when they're not physically equipped for the job. We've seen people die. I'm not going to put my men at risk having to rescue someone who shouldn't be there in the first place." Emma felt her childhood dream crumbling. "What if I train harder? What if I—" "Emma," Chief Martinez's voice was not unkind, but it was final. "You seem like a bright young woman. Have you considered emergency dispatch? Or maybe fire prevention education? There are ways to serve the community that would be more suitable for someone with your physical limitations." As Emma walked out of the fire station that grey October morning, she felt the weight of every doubt she'd ever had about herself. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was too small, too weak, too naive to think she could do this job. But as she passed the memorial wall dedicated to fallen firefighters, including her father's name etched in bronze, something inside her hardened. 3 months later, Emma was still working her day job at the town's hardware store, but her nights and weekends were dedicated to a different kind of training. If the fire department wouldn't accept her through official channels, she would prepare herself in ways they couldn't imagine. She converted her basement into a training facility, complete with crawl spaces, ventilation shafts, and tight corners that mimic the interior of burning buildings. She studied architectural blueprints, learning how buildings were constructed, where the weakest points were, and most importantly, where the access points were that larger firefighters might miss. Emma's secret weapon wasn't just her size, it was her methodology. While other firefighters relied on brute strength, she developed techniques based on leverage, physics, and spatial awareness. She practiced moving through spaces barely wider than her shoulders, memorizing the feeling of navigating in complete darkness. Her most important training came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Martinez, a former Navy SEAL who had moved to town to open a fitness center, became Emma's mentor after hearing about her rejection from the fire department. "Strength isn't about how much you can lift," Rebecca explained during one of their grueling training sessions. "It's about using what you have efficiently. You'll never be able to carry a 200-pound man on your back, but you can drag him. You can use mechanical advantage. You can get to places others can't." Emma also focused on another aspect of firefighting that larger firefighters sometimes overlooked: the psychological element. She studied child psychology, learning how to communicate with terrified children, how to keep them calm in crisis situations, how to think like a scared kid hiding in a burning building. Children hide, she explained to Rebecca during one of their training discussions. When adults are in danger, they try to escape. When children are in danger, they hide. They go to the smallest, darkest places they can find, under beds, in closets, in spaces that make them feel safe. It was this insight that would prove crucial on the night that changed everything. November 15th started as a quiet evening at Maplewood Children's Home, a small orphanage on the outskirts of town. Emma was working late at the hardware store, organising inventory when she heard the sirens. Living in a small town, you learn to recognise the different patterns of emergency vehicles. This wasn't a medical call or a car accident. This was a structure fire, and, by the sound of it, a big one. Emma closed the store and drove toward the sound of the sirens, her heart pounding. She had been monitoring the fire department's radio frequency for months, and she turned it on now. All units, we have a fully involved structure fire at 1247 Maple Street, Maplewood Children's Home. Multiple occupants reported inside. This is not a drill. Emma's blood ran cold. Maplewood Children's Home housed 28 children, ranging in age from 4 to 16. As she arrived at the scene, she could see the entire second floor of the Victorian-era building was engulfed in flames. Fire trucks surrounded the building, their lights cutting through the thick smoke that filled the air. She parked her car at a safe distance and approached the command centre that Chief Martinez had established on the street. The organised chaos of a major fire response was in full swing. Firefighters running hose lines, paramedics setting up triage areas, police officers managing evacuating neighbours. "Emma?" Chief Martinez noticed her approaching. "You shouldn't be here. This is an active fire scene." "How many children are still inside?" she asked, ignoring his warning. "We've accounted for 13 children and 4 staff members who made it out through the main exits," he replied grimly. "But we believe there are still 15 children trapped on the second floor. The main staircase has collapsed, and the back staircase is blocked by fire." Emma looked up at the building's facade. The Victorian architecture included numerous decorative elements: bay windows, gingerbread trim, and, most importantly, an old-fashioned dumbwaiter shaft that had been used to transport laundry between floors. The shaft was barely 2 feet by 2 feet, invisible to anyone who didn't know the building's history. "Chief, I know this building," Emma said urgently. "I did a fire prevention presentation here last year. There's a dumbwaiter shaft that connects the basement to the second floor. It's narrow, but it's intact." Captain Hendricks overheard and shook his head. "Emma, even if that shaft exists, none of my men can fit through a 2-foot opening. We're going to have to wait for the ladder truck to position for window rescue." "The ladder truck is 20 minutes away," Emma replied. "Those children don't have 20 minutes. Chief Martinez understood immediately what she was suggesting. "Absolutely not. You're not trained, you're not equipped, and you're not my responsibility. I'm not sending a civilian into a burning building." "You're not sending me," Emma said, already walking toward her car where she kept a basic emergency kit. "I'm going—" Emma had less than 2 minutes to prepare before Chief Martinez would have officers physically restrain her. She grabbed her emergency kit from her car: a small oxygen tank designed for emergency escape, a compact flashlight, rope, and a basic radio. Her 3 months of basement training had prepared her for this moment. She entered the building through the basement delivery entrance, which was still relatively clear of smoke. The dumbwaiter shaft was exactly where she remembered it, and more importantly, it was still intact. The shaft was narrow, just 24 inches wide and 20 inches deep, but Emma had trained for exactly this scenario. She radioed to the command center. "Chief, I'm in the shaft." Radio silence unless it's an emergency. I need to concentrate. The ascent was more difficult than any of her training scenarios. The shaft was filled with smoke, and she had to rely entirely on her sense of touch and her mental map of the building. She climbed using a technique she had developed, bracing her back against one wall and her feet against the other, inching upward in a process that felt agonizingly slow but took only minutes. When she reached the second floor, she could hear them. The children crying, calling for help. The smoke was thicker here, and the heat was intense. She followed the sound of voices, crawling through the hallway that connected the dormitory rooms. "Hello!" she called out, trying to project calm authority despite her racing heart. "My name is Emma, and I'm here to help. Can anyone hear me?" A small voice responded from the far end of the hallway. "We're here! We're in the bathroom!" Emma crawled toward the voice, her flashlight cutting through the smoke. She found them huddled in the bathroom at the end of the hall, 15 children, ranging in age from 4 to 12, with an 8-year-old girl named Sophia apparently serving as their leader. "Okay," Emma said, assessing the situation quickly. "I know you're scared, but I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to get out of here, but we need to do it one at a time." The dumbwaiter shaft could accommodate one child at a time, and Emma had enough rope to lower each child safely to the basement level, where other firefighters could receive them. But she needed to keep the children calm and organised while making 15 individual trips. Emma's training in child psychology proved as valuable as her physical preparation. She turned the rescue into a game, explaining to the children that they were going to be secret agents, escaping through a special tunnel. "Sophia, you're going to be my lieutenant," Emma told the 8-year-old, who had been keeping the younger children calm. "I need you to help me keep everyone quiet and brave while we get everyone out." One by one, Emma lowered the children through the dumbwaiter shaft. The youngest, a 4-year-old named Marcus, was terrified and refused to go. Emma spent precious minutes earning his trust, eventually convincing him that she would be right behind him. "I promise, Marcus," she said, securing the rope around his small frame. "I'm going to be right behind you. Count to 10 after you get to the bottom, and I'll be there." The physical demands were enormous. Each child weighed between 40 and 80 pounds, and Emma had to carefully lower them 15 feet through the narrow shaft. Her shoulders burned, her arms shook, but she continued the methodical process. The smoke was getting thicker, and the heat was becoming unbearable. Emma could hear the fire advancing, could feel the building structure beginning to weaken. But she had made a promise to 15 children, and she was going to keep it. With each child she lowered, Emma could hear the cheers from the firefighters below as they received another survivor. She could hear Chief Martinez on the radio, coordinating the rescue efforts and calling for additional ambulances. The last child was a 12-year-old named David, who had been helping Emma manage the younger children. He was large for his age, and Emma was exhausted, but she secured the rope around him with shaking hands. "Emma," David said as she prepared to lower him, "what about you? How are you going to get out?" Emma smiled, though he couldn't see it through the smoke. "Don't worry about me, David. I've got this figured out." As Emma lowered the last child, she could feel the building structure beginning to fail. The floor beneath her feet was hot, and she could hear the ominous groaning of weakening support beams. She had maybe 2 minutes before the second floor collapsed entirely. Emma's own escape through the dumbwaiter shaft was the most dangerous part of the entire rescue. She had to descend quickly, but the shaft was filled with smoke and the rope was slippery from sweat. She used the same technique she had used to ascend, bracing against the walls and controlling her descent. Halfway down, she heard the sound she had been dreading, the crash of the second floor collapsing. The building shuddered and debris fell down the shaft. Emma pressed herself against the wall, protecting her head, as plaster and wood fell around her. she reached the basement level just as the entire second floor collapsed into the first floor. The building was now completely engulfed, but all 15 children were safe. Emma emerged from the basement entrance to find chaos. Paramedics were treating the children, firefighters were dealing with the collapsed structure, and Chief Martinez was standing in the middle of it all, coordinating the response. When he saw Emma emerge from the basement, covered in soot and smoke, he stopped mid-sentence in his radio conversation. "All children accounted for," Emma reported, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. "No injuries." The story of Emma Thompson's rescue spread far beyond their small town. The local newspaper ran a front-page story titled, "Small Town Hero Saves 15 Children." The State Fire Marshal's office launched an investigation into the rescue techniques used, and Emma's innovative use of the dumbwaiter shaft became a case study in emergency rescue procedures. But the most important recognition came from Chief Martinez himself. 2 weeks after the fire, he appeared at Emma's hardware store with an official fire department application. "Emma," he said, his voice carrying a tone of respect that hadn't been there during their first meeting. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. You showed us that being a firefighter isn't about how much you can lift or how tall you are. It's about problem-solving, courage, and the willingness to put others before yourself." Captain Hendricks, who had been the most skeptical of Emma's abilities, was with him. "You did something that night that none of us could have done. You saved 15 lives because you were exactly the right size, with exactly the right training, at exactly the right time." Emma looked at the application in her hands, then back at the 2 firefighters. "Does this mean I still have to meet the physical requirements?" Chief Martinez smiled. "Emma, you've already proven you can do this job. But, yes, you'll still need to complete the official training program, though I suspect you'll find it easier than your unconventional preparation." 6 months later, Emma Thompson was sworn in as the first female firefighter in her department's 75-year history. She specialised in confined space rescue and child emergency response, developing training programs that are now used by fire departments across the state. The Maplewood Children's Home was rebuilt with modern safety features, including multiple exit routes and state-of-the-art fire suppression systems. A small plaque in the lobby reads, "In honour of Emma Thompson, who proved that heroes come in all sizes." Emma still keeps her basement training facility, now using it to train other firefighters in confined space rescue techniques. She often tells new recruits the same thing Rebecca Martinez told her. Strength isn't about how much you can lift. It's about using what you have efficiently. And sometimes, when she's responding to a call involving children, Emma remembers the words of 4-year-old Marcus, who sent her a drawing 6 months after the rescue. In crayon letters, he wrote, "Thank you for being small enough to save us." Emma Thompson learned that being too small wasn't a limitation. It was exactly what made her the perfect firefighter for the job that mattered most,